to give some Republican nominees a hard time, but I've continued to use them because I keep as many traditions in place as I can. But to folks who are watching this hearing, their job is to evaluate the nominee in three categories: professional competency, character, judicial disposition. They spent hundreds of hours, talked to hundreds of people from all walks of life about this judge. Judge Barrett. And here's what they found. The American Bar Association Standing Committee have only communicated with this august committee on 2 occasions. The first was 10 years ago, when I wrote a strong letter in support of now Justice Elena Kagan, whose term substantial majority of the standing committee determined that Judge
Mr. Leahy, Mr. Durbin, Mr. Whitehouse, Ms. Klobuchar, Mr.
to everything she has done and who she is, and somehow that the Affordable Care Act is in jeopardy. She explained, I think, with great skill, the issue before the Supreme Court. It's really one of severability, which is a very technical doctrine. It doesn't have anything to do with the merits. For the 100 and maybe 80, whether you can sever million Americans who get their health insurance on the job, they would eliminate that. They would take that away from them in order to put them on a single-payer government program. Medicare, as we know, has its own financial problems and something we obviously need to shore up. It's a commitment we've made to our seniors that if you pay into the Medicare program, you're going to have health coverage when you become eligible. But dumping 330 million people into the Medicare program in a single payer system will bankrupt it. And we know that providers depend on a payment mix between Medicaid, Medicare, and private insurance in order to pay the bills. Without the private insurance premium or payments, our health care
Kennedy. Mrs. Blackburn. Mrs. Feinstein. Mr. Leahy. Mr. Durbin. Mr. Whitehouse. Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Coons. Mr. Blumenthal. Ms. Hirono. Mr. Booker. Ms. Harris. Mr. Chairman.
Aye.
Tips to Grow By is sponsored by Akron Children's Hospital.
I'm talking with Dr. Robert Perry about surgery safety during the COVID pandemic.
If your child does require surgery during this period, hospitals are taking all precautions to maintain safety. 72 hours before an operation, children are tested to protect them and others in the hospital. Everyone's wearing a mask. People are screened on entering the hospital. Disinfecting and cleaning protocols have been increased, and the number of visitors have been limited. So if you do require surgery, rest assured it's a safe place to be, and don't delay scheduling.
Will do to Judge Barrett today. Not all nominees have been so lucky. This is an important point for those watching these proceedings who
I'm Matt Collick, team owner of Collick Racing and proud University of Akron alum. 30 years ago, UA's engineering program started its own Formula SAE team, Zips Racing. Every year, students design and build a race car from the ground up, taking what they learn in the classroom out to where the rubber meets the road. Students use this experience to drive their careers forward. See the excitement for yourself at zipsracing.org.
Of the Senate's institutional design and of presidential prerogative. I lost that argument. My position may have been principled, but in the context of the Democrats' relentless and endless pattern and practice of abusing their power, it was untenable. I tried to persuade my colleagues to seek a good faith They stooped to new lows, concocting a patently false accusation of teenage sexual assault against an honest, honorable, and innocent man. Like inquisitors, burning heretics at the stake, torching, sliming, smearing, breaking norms, breaking rules, to slander and strangle the nominations of constitutionalist judges, is simply what the left does. This is a feature, not a bug. This is how they operate. This is what they do. Liberals, not conservatives, turned the Supreme Court of the United States into a super legislature of sorts. Democrats, not Republicans, escalated Supreme Court confirmations into ideological knife fights and worse, and made political outcomes the defining issue of this process rather than judicial philosophy and qualifications. What has happened to this problem isn't a bipartisan failure. It is a unipartisan strategy. Every norm broken, every act of escalation, one party, the Democrats, has been the aggressor in every single instance. At every step along the way, our side has used our constitutional authority, and the other side has abused its authority. There is no tit for tat. There is just tat. Democrats killed Judge Bork's nomination for partisan political reasons. They killed Miguel Estrada's nomination for partisan political reasons. They slandered Justice Thomas, Justice Alito, and Justice Kavanaugh for partisan political reasons. They nuked the filibuster, again, for partisan political reasons. And now they're trying to scuttle this meeting, this hearing, this vote for partisan political reasons. When it comes to the judiciary, abuse of power is their agenda. Now, the left seems to think that the Supreme Court exists for this purpose and that it exists to impose their very worst ideas onto the public, onto those recalcitrant members of the public, those people we call citizens who refuse blindly to go along with their entitled extremism. They want the court to empower abortion activists and woke performance artists, campus and corporate elites, and social media outrage addicts to tell everyone how to live without votes, without accountability, and without debate. Taking debatable matters and placing them beyond debate seems to be their formula. They don't want democracy. They don't want representative government. They want docility. And Judge Amy Coney Barrett is not going to give it to them. She's not going to politicize the Supreme Court. She's going to help depoliticize a court that the left has spent decades turning into an extra-constitutional Sanhedrin of philosopher kings. She's going to turn back policy decisions and political debates back to the people and their elected accountable representatives, where they properly belong. Judge Barrett understands that under our Constitution, policy is supposed to be determined by the priorities of the people, not editorial boards or Twitter trolls or safety school faculty senates. That is why the left is so furious about this nomination. For all the pious pablum you hear on MSNBC, and for all the pious pablum you'll hear on MSNBC and those other networks tonight, understand they aren't angry because this process isn't fair. They're angry because it is. Not because they think Amy Coney Barrett is going to be a partisan justice, but because they know she will not be. They're not afraid Judge Barrett will legislate from the bench, but that she will force Democrats and Republicans to legislate from legislatures, as the Constitution itself requires. Judge Barrett threatens their power, not because she has a hidden agenda or hidden powers, but because they do, and she won't enact those powers or exercise them by judicial fiat. And that is exactly why we need to have Amy Coney Barrett on the Supreme Court of the United States. Not to avenge Bork, Thomas, Estrada, Alito, or Kavanaugh, but rather to restore the institutional integrity of the Supreme Court and to the Senate and all the public institutions that leftist judicial abuse has twisted and desecrated for 2 generations. We need to confirm Amy Coney Barrett, not to give political power to conservatives or Republicans, but to finally give it back to the American people, from whom it was stolen so many years ago. The left has taken the political low road on the judiciary. For decades, Amy Coney Barrett will take the constitutional high road for decades to come, every day earning, in more ways than one, her new title of justice. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Well said, Senator Lee. And I have a full statement I'll introduce into the record without objection about the process. I think Senator Grassley would like to speak for about 5 minutes. Is that correct?
I hope it won't irritate you, Mr. Chairman,
It will.
if
Music to my
I
ears.
take a few minutes.
Take your time. Senator Grassley.
Obviously, our colleagues don't think that they ought to represent their states by, and that's what they're not doing, is representing their people when they don't show up here. I'm talking about my colleagues across the aisle. But those of us that are here are pleased to have voted Judge Amy Barrett's nomination out of committee to the floor. And the reason for doing that is that she has the temperament and humility that we would expect of a judge. She approaches cases without bias and agenda. Most importantly, she understands that a judge should interpret, not make the law. She was thorough, candid, and forthright in the hearing, but when pressed on how she might rule in a case, Judge Barrett properly applied the Ginsburg rule, and that rule demonstrates her independence by not showing any hints, previews, or forecasts. And those 3 words are from the Ginsburg testimony of about 28 years ago. Judge Barrett clearly respects precedent, and she practices judicial restraint. Her judicial method is rigorous and exacting, but fair and open-minded. I specifically asked Judge Barrett if she had made any promise to anyone about how she might rule on a case. She responded, "The answer is no." Quote, "The answer is no. It would be inconsistent with judicial independence." End of quote. She just expressed there what we expect and learn from 8th grade civics, what the checks and balances of government are all about. The Supreme Court is the court where we expect them to make sure that the executive branch and the legislative branch doesn't go outside the bounds that the Constitution sets for this Congress and the executive branch. Judge Barrett is even-handed and has ruled for both plaintiff and defendants in all kinds of cases that since she served on the Seventh Circuit Court of Appeals. When asked if she would follow the law wherever it leads, she said yes. The Affordable Care Act was brought up quite significantly, and almost every person, maybe in this committee, but more so by Democrats that were trying to make it look like she would be a force to just have her mind made up already that the Affordable Care Act ought to go out the window. But throughout the hearing, Democrats spun then a bunch of nonsense about Judge Barrett and the Affordable Care Act. They claimed her critique of Chief Justice Roberts' reasoning in the 2012 ACA case dictates how she'd vote in the upcoming case. And we all know that that's bunk from how she's described her approach to that ACA. Judge Barrett made clear then that she doesn't have an agenda. She testified, quote, "I have no hostility to the ACA," end of quote. Academics critic court decisions all the time. So obviously she was doing that as a person, tenured professor, Notre Dame School of Law. Her critique of Roberts' reasoning was shared by many legal commentators across the political spectrum. Moreover, the question before the Supreme Court this fall are entirely separate, so it's pointless to speculate. Senate Democrats want to portray the judge as a threat to health care. They want to distract from the fact that they recently filibustered just yesterday and 3 days ago COVID relief bills on the Senate floor that would have protected pre-existing conditions, although none of us Republicans are threatening pre-existing conditions. This is all is just a Democrat election year scare tactic, but voters aren't buying it. A political poll released yesterday showed a majority of Americans want the Senate to confirm Judge Barrett. That's what we're going to do. And she made it easy for us with her outstanding performance here 3 days before this committee. The judge's record shows that she practices judicial restraint. In her words, a judge who approaches a case as an opportunity, I better say this is her quote, "A judge who approaches a case as an opportunity for an exercise of the will has betrayed her judicial duty," end of quote. The judge won't be a politician on the bench. She'll make decisions as they should be decided in an impartial manner and in accordance with the law and the Constitution. I take the judge at her word, quote, in my time as a judge, my job, my boss is the rule of law, not imposing my policy preferences, end of quote. So I'm pleased that we have voted Judge Barrett out of committee to be an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Grassley. Senator Hawley would like to present a statement for the record, and that will be allowed without objection. Senator Cruz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to commend you, Mr. Chairman, on conducting a remarkable set of hearings last week. And I want to commend every member of this committee for the result, approving Judge Barrett's nomination, moving it to the floor, where I have every confidence she will be confirmed on Monday. This is a major victory